This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm one of your hosts, Ashley, and this is...
Jessica, woohoo!
Yay for myself! Yay!
Look, I've had a stressful week. So I'm gonna play myself.
You can be your own little cheerleader.
Exactly.
We should all be our own cheerleader.
Yeah, and be other people's cheerleaders because they need it too.
Yeah.
So, on today's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the case of Cyntoia Brown.
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, did I say that right? I forgot her name again.
Yes.
And I'm going to be finishing my two-parter on Jonestown.
And this is where shit hits the fan.
Hits the fan. Like it hits the fan. And it's so funny because my one of my really good friends, like one of my best friends, she sent me a meme, and it was that girl that like does the makeup and true crime stories on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something along the lines of how she shouldn't find shit like this cool, like cults cool. Or whatever it was. And she's like, it's you with Jonestown.
That's like what we were talking about last week of having a favorite cult.
Yeah.
Like, what?
What is wrong with me? Just find it very fascinating, okay?
It is.
All right. I've never heard of Cyntoia Brown, so I'm excited for this one.
So unfortunately, I hadn't either, and I saw I was kind of like putzing around looking for something to do for this topic, and it's actually, I found this documentary on Netflix called Murder to Mercy, the Cyntoia Brown story, and I watched it, and it's pretty fascinating.
All right, cool. Give it to me, woman.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hear your take on this too.
Okay.
So Cyntoia Brown was adopted at the age of 2. Her birth family was all kinds of fucked up. Like, oh my gosh. They interviewed them on this documentary, and both her grandmother and her mother were like raped and molested and have mental health issues and had alcohol and drug issues. At one point, her birth grandma tried to commit suicide by shooting herself in the stomach.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's just, she said her birth grandmother in the documentary said that had she been as educated back in the day as she was now, she would have never had her kids to have them go through what they went through. And that she also said that her mother should have had a hysterectomy.
Wow.
So, yeah. So obviously this made for an extremely unstable home life.
Yeah.
And Cyntoia's mother got pregnant at the age of 16.
Oh.
And the grandmother had a child from rape. And I don't know if that was Cyntoia's mom was the child of rape or if it was like a sibling. But so it was just, they have a tragic past.
Yeah.
But so Cyntoia's mom became pregnant at the age of 16. And during her whole pregnancy, she was drinking and smoking pot and drinking heavily.
Ew.
She said that every day she would drink. If she didn't have alcohol, she would find it. And she would drink a lot.
Wow.
She continued to drink for 8 months past her to giving birth. So Cyntoia was 8 months old. And that's when she found cocaine.
Cyntoia found cocaine or the mom?
The mom.
Okay.
Cyntoia was 8 months old.
She still could have found cocaine lying around. Sniff that shit. Babies put everything in their mouth.
That's true. It's true. No, so her mom found cocaine, and then to afford that habit, she began prostituting.
Perfect.
And she said, right. She said she was raped repeatedly at gunpoint, while she was prostituting, and eventually she did end up in jail.
Okay.
So this is when, at the age of 2, Cyntoia Brown was adopted, and her adopted mother has stayed in her life the entire time. She seems like just a really nice lady.
Good.
But with all of these issues in her background, you know, the genetic component of mental illness and the fact that she, you know, probably had fetal alcohol syndrome, which we'll get back to in a little bit, she started having some behavioral issues.
Of course.
Yeah. She got kicked out of junior high, and ran away because she was afraid she would get into trouble for getting kicked out of junior high. She came home and decided her mom put her in an alternative school because she was obviously expelled from public school.
Yeah.
And she hated it, and she ran away again.
What's an alternative school?
Oh, do you not have those in Canada?
I don't know.
It's where the naughty kids go.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I mean, there's a lot of different types of alternative schools. But like when you say alternative, most people think of like it's where they've been expelled from regular school and this is kind of like their last chance.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a tough. One of my
I'm gonna say, did
when
you
I was
go to
in
one?
No, but when I was in school for education, one of my cohorts, his student teaching placement was at an alternative school.
Oof.
And we would shadow each other. So we would like rotate through schools. And so I spent a couple days at his alternative school. And while we were there was like a lockdown because some kid came and with a gun and it was terrifying. But
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those kids obviously are very troubled, don't have the best home lives. So it's sad, but
yeah.
Anyway, so then her adopted mom said that her behavioral problems just kind of got worse and worse, culminating at the age of 16 when she murdered someone.
Who did, Cyntoia?
Yep.
Oh, okay, that escalated.
Yep.
All right.
So we'll get into what happened that night. But in 2004, at the age of 16, Cyntoia Brown was arrested and put in Nashville, Tennessee juvenile detention for homicide, robbery, possession of a weapon, and criminal impersonation.
Holy crap, okay.
Yeah. So they never really got into the criminal impersonation charge, and so I don't know much about that. But they interviewed her because when she first got arrested, somehow, some way, I'm not really sure how, a documentary film crew got a hold of her and they wanted to do a documentary on her. So they filmed her. And she was 16 at the time. And she said she never really felt love, except that her adoptive mom was very loving. But I think sometimes people ignore the love that their parents give them.
Well, I mean, it wasn't her real mom, right? So I think that's
But I
probably...
mean, she'd been her mom since she was 2.
I know, but I think that at the same time, it's like you still want to receive that love from your biological family.
Yeah.
And she probably felt abandoned and like not cared for because she was just dropped out when she was 2. So.
Yeah, and I know that some children of adoption do have those kind of like abandonment issues.
Yeah.
So she said that she had never felt loved, and so she always tried to please everyone so that they would love her, basically.
Yeah.
And she said, quote, "It made her feel old, tired, and weary." Which, yeah, it was really interesting to hear that come out of a 16-year-old's mouth, you know? So their first kind of part to her case was to determine if they were going to transfer her from the juvenile system to the adult system because of the homicide charge.
But she's 16.
Yes. But in a lot of states and in Tennessee, which is where this was, if there's a homicide charge, they can transfer it to an adult court.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
Tennessee
Okay.
has the harshest mandatory sentence for transfer juveniles, requiring them to serve 60 years with the possibility of parole after 51.
Or if you're just a model citizen, you can get out in 2.
Not in Tennessee.
Okay.
And so before going into this case, she was evaluated by several doctors to see if she had any psychological issues that could be treated and rehabilitated. Because in the juvenile court system, she would be there till she was 19. So it was 2.5 years at this point because she was 16 and a half. But the juvenile court is much more focused on rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So she would get mental help, and they would really focus, again, like I said, more on rehabilitation rather than like punishment.
Yeah.
But if she went to adult court, obviously she'd just be put in prison. So let's talk a little bit about what happened.
Yes, please.
So Cyntoia at this point had run away. So she was living on the streets. She was dating, remember, she's 16 and a half. She is dating a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
His name on the street was Cutthroat. That's what he was known as.
Nice.
Yeah, and she just called him Cut. That was like her name for him.
Hey, Cuddy. Sorry, I don't know where that came
well,
from.
So she said that at first it was just like a regular relationship, right? But then it slowly morphed into him basically becoming her pimp.
Super.
Yeah, because they were living, on the streets, and so she was required to go make money for him.
Yeah.
And so she said on that night she was in the hotel room with him. They were getting high and having sex. She said that's basically all they did. Again, she's 16.
Yep.
And he's 24.
Yep.
So he apparently started talking to her and saying, like, you're not doing enough. You're starting to, like, quote, slouch. You're not bringing in enough money. So you need to go out and get it done. And so she decided that night to head out. She wanted to hitch a ride and get to East Nashville because apparently that's where, like, the best areas were for prostitution.
Okay.
So she was walking down the road, and she actually found a ride. A 43-year-old man named Johnny Allen approached her and said, hey, you need a ride? And she's like, yeah, I do. So once she got in there, he was like, hey, are you up for any action? And mind you, this is all from her side of the story.
Yeah.
Said, are you up for any action? And she said, well, yeah. And she told him that it was $200.
Okay.
And then he haggled with her. He said, well, how about 100? And they settled on 150.
Okay.
And that's just insane to me. Like, I know that obviously that happens, but I can't imagine like haggling, like having to haggle over like your own body. Like, I feel like it's almost like you don't haggle with like, I don't know, like you don't haggle with like going to get your hair done or like your dentist appointment. Obviously not saying that these people are prostitutes in any way, shape, or form, but I just feel like that's a weird thing to haggle about. Like, just give the girl $200 if you're gonna,
Oh, well, he's a cheap ass, though, so.
Right.
So,
yeah. So she was trying to get him to go back to her hotel room because obviously this wasn't the first time that she had, had sex for money. And so she knew relatively had to be safe. And so she wanted to go back to the hotel room, but he's like, no, let's go back to my house. There's no one there. There's more privacy. And she's 16.
Yeah.
She wants money. Her pimp told her to go get money. So she's like, okay.
Yeah.
On the way there, she said that he kept bragging about himself and like how he was this sharpshooter in the army and that most women just want to date him for his money and he was a pretty big deal in the community and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Once they got to his house, he showed her some guns that he had. He had 3 guns, and one of them he was like showing to her. which made her really nervous.
Yeah.
She's, again, 16.
Yeah. He's 43.
43. She's at his house, which she didn't want to do in the first place.
Well, no, you never should.
Right. And he's talking like how important he is and showing her guns. And she even said in the trial, she was like, that made me kind of think like, well, who am I? You know, like, who am I to him? Like, if he killed me right now, it wouldn't even matter. Like, he's important in the community. I'm not.
Yeah.
So she said she asked if they could go downstairs and watch some TV because that's where his door was. And so that she knew that that was the easiest way to exit if she needed to. And then they were kind of, you know, chilling for a little bit. And then she's like, you know, I haven't slept in a really long time. You know, do you mind if I sleep for a little bit? Hoping that he would fall asleep too. And then she could peace out at that time.
Yeah.
So they got in bed and she said that he would kind of like touch her lightly and then she would just like roll over like she was asleep, like pretend like she was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of, I think, got frustrated and like grabbed her really hard between her legs and she's like, ugh, and like rolled over. And then she said he gave her this look that she was like, he's gonna hit me.
Yeah.
Like, he's pissed and he's gonna hit me. But instead of hitting her, he rolled over to reach for what she thought was a gun. And so she pulled a gun out of her purse and shot him in the back of the head.
Holy
and he died instantly.
shit.
Yeah.
It's probably reaching for a freaking condom.
So
holy shit.
She also took his wallet and truck.
Oh, okay. Why not?
Yeah, so that didn't look good for her. And of course, the judge ruled to transfer her case to the adult court after all that evidence. So in 2006, she finally stands trial in the adult court. At trial, the defense said it was self-defense. And the prosecution said it was homicide.
Yeah, it is homicide.
So during the trial, the medical examiner testified that the wound he received was immediately fatal. Like, he wouldn't have, it would have killed him immediately.
Yeah.
And the picture of him, you know, because obviously they have crime scene pictures, he's clasping his hands. Like, his fingers are intertwined through his fingers. And she said that's how he would have had to have died. Like, it's not like he got shot and then he intertwined his fingers. He would have been shot in that position, which called into question her story of him turning over to get something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. So the jury deliberated for 6 hours. And what do you think they found, Jessica?
Ugh. Don't ask me this shit. Because I'm like hoping that they're going to say guilty, but they're probably going to say self-defense.
They found her guilty.
Okay.
So they found her guilty of first degree and felony murder, as well as, and they said especially aggravated robbery.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's different than aggravated robbery, but
okay.
Because I've never heard that especially put in front of it, but
I don't know. Well, I think it might just be like, especially they thought that it was aggravated robbery, not just.
Well, no, because they had the video of the court and that you could hear the like spokesperson of like, we, the court, find the defendant guilty of especially aggravated assault.
You mean robbery?
Yeah, that one, sorry.
Tennessee Code. Here we go.
Oh.
2010 Tennessee Code, Title 39, Criminal Offenses, Offenses Against Person, Part 4, Robbery, especially aggravated robbery. It is robbery as defined in accomplished with a deadly weapon and where the victim suffers serious bodily injury. Especially aggravated robbery is a Class A felony.
Okay.
So,
makes sense.
Deadly weapon with major injury or death.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. And then robbery is like, you can use a weapon, but it doesn't always cause injury or death. Sometimes it's just threatened to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a crime against person still. Threat of violence against a person.
Right.
So, okay.
So at this point, the documentary that they had been working on with her aired, and a lawyer saw it. And he said, this chick did not get a fair trial. So he took it on pro bono. At this point, she had been in jail for 5 years and 11 months.
Okay.
So one of the main reasons he took on the case was because of the admittance of her birth mother that she used alcohol while pregnant with her. And so she had most likely had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
Yes.
So he appealed in 2012 based on this information. She was then 24 and was working on her associate's degree in prison.
Well, okay. Why? I thought that she would have to be in prison for 60 years.
Yes.
So why work on a degree if you're never getting out until you're elderly?
Well, one, she probably had hope that she would get out. And two, what else are you going to do?
I guess it just seems like a waste of money and time. Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So, they argued that she is impaired based on the fact that her functional abilities are so low that she is cognitively impaired, showing that she could not control her impulses.
Okay.
But in an appeal in the United States court, you have to show the judge that no reasonable jury would have convicted her had they known this information.
Okay. So
that's a
retrial?
steep hill. That's a steep hill to climb, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is just even to get a retrial.
Oh, okay.
So they have like a whole appeal process to even get a retrial. She was denied. She did not get a retrial based on that evidence.
Okay.
Fun fact, the documentary shared, 2/3 of appeals filed in state courts are reviewed and 81% are denied.
Well, duh. Cheap asses. Sorry.
So in 2017, a new law brought a new light on Cyntoia's case. And this is where I'm torn, because I don't know necessarily that I think she shot him because she thought he was reaching for a gun, but I do think she was a victim.
Yeah.
And in 2017, the law caught up with that and said that no minor can be charged and sentenced as a prostitute. A news story stated that now she would be seen as a sex slave by men who used her instead of a prostitute who murdered someone.
Huh.
So I think that she was scared. She was 16. He was a sexual predator preying on a young girl, a minor.
Yeah.
Did he deserve to die? No. And did she deserve to serve time? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think that she should have served as much time as she was given because of the fact that she was basically sex trafficked, you know?
Yeah.
So, and at this point, interesting enough, her story was picked up by Rihanna.
Oh.
And so she shared it, like retweeted it, and then Lana Del Rey picked it up, and a bunch of other like famous people, and so it started to gain a lot of attention, and the hashtag went around, #free Cyntoia Brown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they had a lot of new light and new kind of knowledge, and not knowledge, but like brought this case back into like the limelight, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, the governor was going into his last year of governorship. So they applied for clemency with him and the probation court. And the way that works is the governor has the right to pardon anyone, and they rarely do it. And the crooked ones pardon their friends.
Well,
but
yeah.
This was kind of their last avenue. So you have to sit in front of the probation board, plea your case, and then they give a recommendation to the governor, and then the governor makes his decision based on that. So What they were basically asking was for her to be able to have probation. So she would still have a criminal record. She still wouldn't get like full rights. And she would get out of jail, but she would be on probation.
Okay.
At this point, she's been in jail for around 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So in 2018, she finally had her parole hearing in front of the board. I wrote she had her parole hearing in front of the board of parole. And she was now 30 years old.
Yeah.
A fun fact. One of the prosecutors who, on her appeal case years ago, argued that 51 years was the correct sentence and she shouldn't be able to have an appeal, ended up being one of her professors.
Oh, wow.
And in 2008, the same prosecutor spoke at her parole hearing saying that she should be paroled.
Okay.
And her original juvenile attorney also spoke for her.
Huh.
At this hearing, Johnny... Huh?
Fascinating.
Yeah. And at this hearing, Johnny's family also spoke up, the man she murdered, and said that it's a sad story and Johnny is very missed, and that the lady who was speaking hopes that Cyntoia truly had changed. She didn't say anything either way on if she thought she should be released or not, but the gist was that no, she deserves to be in jail. However, he was a sexual predator.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past that when she was talking about like, so here was after all was said and done, here's the parole board's recommendation. 2 thought that they should lower her charge from first degree to second degree.
Okay.
2 thought that they should lower her sentence to 25 years.
So she'd only have 10 more years?
And 2 said, nah, she's good. Keep her where she is.
Okay.
So then they took all these and they sent them to the governor. So in 2019, after 14 years and 5 months, so right around that 15-year mark, in jail, the governor makes his decision. So what do you think the governor said, Jessica?
Free her.
Kind of.
Okay.
He said he actually called a private meeting with her lawyers because he wanted to tell them in person that he would commute her sentence to 15 years, which means she had around 7 months left.
Perfect.
And then she would be on probation for another 10 years.
Okay.
So while she was incarcerated, she did earn 2 degrees. And she now works for an advocate for sex trafficking victims and social justice reform.
Good.
Yeah, so it's an interesting case because at first when she was telling her story, I was like, oh, okay, you definitely murdered him. And then I started to think about it and I was like, well, I mean, yeah, she murdered him, but okay, if a 16-year-old was in a house with a 43-year-old and he was trying to have sex with her and she shot him to get away, like, I wouldn't think twice about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
so,
at the same time, though, like, I get why she probably did what she did. But at the same time, he was just turning around, or so she said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know what he's doing. You don't know what he's grabbing. So, like, why wouldn't you wait until he's made that turnaround to determine from there?
Yeah, well, and I think that was the issue. I think she was, according to her and from what she said, that she was just so scared because of everything else. It just put her on edge. And he shouldn't have been there in the first place. He shouldn't have been picking up 16-year-olds.
Yeah, when he's 43. And then his family's defending him, being like, oh, he's going to be missed. He's a great guy. And it's like, he was a freaking predator.
Yeah. Not saying, again, that he deserved to die.
No.
Not saying that in any way.
At the same time,
but I
don't
do
justify
understand
someone's behavior.
Right.
Like, when you're a scumbag.
Right. Like, like I said, had she been there and shot him because he was like trying to have sex with her, like, if you take out the fact that she was prostituting herself, I think she wouldn't have gotten jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird case. I mean, like, I'm glad that
Yeah,
she got
sure.
out after 15 years because
Yeah,
60 years was a little much.
extreme. Yeah.
60 years was not reasonable.
Right, and I think, I look back at that argument of fetal alcohol syndrome and, like, I know that people with fetal alcohol syndrome do have impulse control, but they were kind of saying that her IQ was really low, that she was, like, almost, like, mentally disabled, but she was able to earn 2 degrees and is now working a successful job, so I don't think that that really affected her cognitive ability in that way. I
No.
mean, definitely probably impulse control for sure, and I'm sure it affected her in different ways, but she seems like she's a very intelligent woman now and doing the right thing for her community and kind of, like, giving back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So that is the story of Cyntoia Brown.
Nice. Never heard it. It was very fascinating.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either. Like, I remember a while ago, like, hearing about Rihanna, tweeting, about freeing some girl, but I didn't really
Yeah.
know much else about it, and I have to tell you, so Cyntoia Brown is, in her 30s now, and they did show, like, an update of her, and oh my gosh, she's gorgeous.
Oh,
So
good.
pretty. So pretty.
Well, she deserves it.
Yeah. So all right, so let's hear about part 2, Jonestown.
Okay. So, this title for my essay is labeled The Final Night.
Ooh.
Ooh la la. So just to recap from last week, Jim Jones is the leader of Jonestown. He moved his people from the United States to South America, a place called Guyana, and he named it Jonestown. The cult members basically were overworked, underfed, and sleep deprived all the time. So it was really horrible conditions. People
Mhm.
are being brainwashed and tortured, and it was just awful. So
Yes, for
yeah.
sure.
So like most cliche statements, this one reigns very true in this case. All good things must come to an end, and
Yes.
Jonestown was no exception to this rule.
And boy, did it come to an end.
A very mighty end.
Yes.
What started as a good intentioned dream for everyone to be equals, blacks and whites alike, um, just part of like this big family, it all came tumbling down in the late fall of 1978. The bustling utopian settlement was to meet its end, an end that had been built upon and solidified for a very long time by Jones and his antics.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't like a out of the blue thing. It was definitely something coming.
Yeah, exactly. It was everything accumulated over the years.
But also, like, hindsight's 2020, whereas, like, I can see where when you were in it, you wouldn't have seen it coming necessarily like we can now.
Yeah. So it all began with the creation of the People's Temple, when Jones created something that the world wasn't really ready for, and he ultimately lost control because of his drug addiction and his paranoid delusions.
Mhm.
Um, since the beginning, he was a man who was not ready for the amount of power he achieved or for the responsibility that came with leading the amount of people he attracted.
Mm.
Like, he attracted
Well, and
so many
put
people.
on top of that, like, just spiraling. I mean, that's if you've ever seen a case of a man spiraling, Jim Jones.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Like, it's just, and then on top of that, like you said last week's episode, his mental health on top of the drug abuse and
Mhm.
alcohol abuse and, the power trip that he was going on. So it
Mhm.
just all accumulated into one big mess.
Yeah, for sure.
He became very greedy, obviously, and he lost sight of his original goal, which was simply peace and acceptance and to make a positive difference on the world around him. Like, he just wanted everybody to feel accepted.
Pinky! Dear God. Sorry.
That's okay.
She heard a dog bark. She's usually on anxiety medicine, and I ran out and I haven't bought her any, and now she's barking at,
Aw,
like, everything.
poor girl.
She's a hot mess.
Okay.
I'm just
So,
gonna mute this and, like, unmute myself to talk.
So it all came to an end as a result of all of these things, but also as a result of family members of some of the members in Jonestown becoming concerned for their loved ones, which you had made mention of last week.
Yeah.
You unmuted yourself to say yeah.
Well, I didn't want it to sound like I wasn't paying attention.
Okay. They were concerned because they began to fear that their loved ones were being held against their will and that they were being abused because they heard rumors about this, and so that backed up their concerns. These families, in turn, wrote letters to Congressman Leo Ryan. And
Poor guy.
oh, so sad. I feel so bad for him. He was such a good guy.
I know, because he seemed like he was like really trying to help.
Yeah, and he was, and so it's just like very unfortunate what happened to him in the end.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley.
Sorry.
So they wrote to Leo Ryan and expressed their concerns for their family members living in Jonestown. And eventually their concerns were heard, and Congressman Ryan acted by taking these individuals along with an NBC camera crew to Guyana to investigate these claims of abuse. Upon arriving in Guyana, family members were asked to stay in the capital, Georgetown, and Congressman Ryan and his crew made their way to see Jones and the community he had created. Little did Congressman Ryan know that he would find much more than he bargained for in Jonestown, a mistake that would definitely cost him and others their lives. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. Once they arrived in Jonestown, to their surprise, they were accepted in a rather welcoming manner. They were welcomed with many happy faces, and Jones even agreed to let the news crew interview him.
Well, it's like, you know, when your mom has like family over and they're like, you better be on your best behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like what it was.
Yeah, but it was just like shocking to them, right? Because they heard all these other negative things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're so welcoming. Like, what the heck?
They're so happy. They're
Yeah.
so vibrant. Yeah.
During the festivities, though, that evening, a member of the People's Temple approached one of the crew members from NBC News. This temple member passed a note to the crew member indicating he wished to leave Jonestown with them. When Jones was approached by Congressman Ryan regarding this the following day, he responded with understanding and simply stated that if someone wished to leave, they were more than welcome to do so. He didn't want to feed the idea that the rumors were true and that no one could leave.
Yeah, but I think also it's a little fishy that someone had to pass you a note saying that they wanted to leave, right?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't want to outwardly say it though, right? So that would probably be the biggest concern is you didn't want to hear like someone overhear you.
Right.
But due to this though, more defectors came forward, also expressing their desire to leave, some even leaving their children behind.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Why would they leave their children? Oh, probably because he had custody, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But they were in South America, so did that even...
I don't know. I think it's just legally binding no matter where you are, and they signed it saying that they were terrible parents and that they lost custody of their child, right?
Yeah.
So, because that was blackmail, so that they wouldn't leave, but I guess it was just so bad that they're like, get me the fuck out of here.
Bye.
Yeah.
Fend for yourself, kid.
Exactly. So that one person that passed the note made it possible for others to also come forward.
Right.
Once these individuals had left, they believed that they were in the clear and that they had finally left behind the horrors of Jonestown.
Yeah.
This unfortunately was not the case.
Right.
Jones had sent armed men to the airstrip that had planes waiting for Congressman Ryan, the NBC team, and the defectors of Jonestown. As they were boarding the planes, a vehicle pulled up and men piled out, armed with weapons, who then opened fire on everyone who was standing on the airstrip. Some were able to flee, while others were viciously gunned down, and one of these individuals was Congressman Ryan.
Mm-hmm. There's a really interesting documentary about Jonestown, and in it they interview I want to say his aide, and she lived through it, but like she was there while they were getting shot at, and I think she got shot. I can't remember, but she lived, and she was talking about like him getting shot and like looking at his like body. It's awful.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, there's a picture of the airstrip and like all their bodies. Like, it's just horrible.
Yeah, it's awful.
This event triggered the events that were to follow, though, in Jonestown.
Right.
Yeah, it's so sad. I hate it.
Mm-hmm. It's
Throughout their time in Jonestown, Jones would routinely hold events called a White Night. So NIGHT, not KNIGHT.
got it.
Okay. Like snowy night, white night. Okay.
Yeah.
This was an event where he would gather the settlement into the pavilion and perform fake trials to test the loyalty of those that followed him. Yeah. So he would make them drink poison to determine how dedicated they were to the cause, and they would all drink.
Just for those of you who are just listening, because this is not a visual medium,
I tried emphasizing
used air quotes.
I tried using the tone of my voice to say poison.
No, but you still did the air quotes, which made me laugh.
I did just now too. So yeah, it wasn't actual poison. But yeah, no, I do the air quotes even when I'm trying to prove my point, but honestly, it's so hard sometimes. You like make facial expressions and it's like, oh, people can't see me. Let me just express my disgust. Okay, so everyone would drink it. Therefore, when the events at the airstrip unfolded, Jones knew that now was the time for the final white night.
Yes.
On November 18th, 1978, so almost my husband was a year the next day.
Oh,
November 19th.
Baby Kyle.
I know, you'd have been a 1-year-old the day after this.
Aw.
You probably want everybody to know that. So on November 18th, 1978, Jones called everyone to the pavilion and explained that it was time for the final white night. In preparation for this event, Jones had been stockpiling cyanide for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Once everyone was gathered together, Jones took his microphone for the last time. And as he was being recorded, he spoke to everyone that was there. I listened to this recording, and it's literally so bone-chilling.
And the fact that, like, people are dying to it.
Yeah. And you can hear some of them, like, wailing in the background and people crying and dying, and it's just awful.
Yeah. Because cyanide's not, like, a nice way to go.
No, not at all. It's very painful. Like, it's not a comfortable way to go. He told everyone that the end was near for them. He said that the congressman had been killed and that it was only a matter of time before they sent people in to kill all of them for what they had done. So essentially, he just let the paranoia take over.
Right.
He reasoned that Congressman Ryan took his sons and his daughters and that the drastic action was required and that his actions of murder were justified.
Mm-hmm.
He explained to all the members that men would parachute in and kill everyone in Jonestown and that taking his concoction would be the best route to go because at least then they would die on their own terms and no one else's. He stated that it was an act of revolutionary suicide, that they were dying for a cause.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this, I think, is a quote, so bear with me. The mixture he had created was made of cyanide, diazepam, an anti-anxiety medication. Oh, which was an anti-anxiety medication. Okay, that was weird. Okay. Promethazine, or however you say that, which is a sedative. Chloral hydrate is a sedative and hypnotic sometimes
Okay.
called knockout drops,
Okay.
and Flavorade. It was a grape-flavored beverage similar to Kool-Aid.
Right. So this is where we get the "don't drink the Kool-Aid" saying from.
That was literally my next sentence, but yes. Thank you.
Damn it! I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, that's perfect. It stops me from talking. Yes, exactly. That's where we get that phrase, "don't drink the Kool-Aid." But in actuality, it was Flavorade.
Gotcha.
Which was very unfortunate for Kool-Aid because everybody
Yeah.
confuses it for that.
Yeah.
The children were given the mixture first, followed by the adults.
That's the part that I cannot get over.
Yeah.
Like, I get you're so brainwashed at this point, you're sleep deprived, you're hungry, like, you're not thinking straight, but I feel like the thought of murdering your children should snap you out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've obviously never been in that situation. I can't judge from sitting here not in a cult, but that's just, like, the one thing that, like, I can't get past.
I'm pretty sure they had guns to their heads.
Yeah, I remember that they had the, armed forces around the sides and stuff, but
So, essentially, it was like they were told not to cry and not to be discouraged, that this was what they were meant to do and that they would finally find peace. And those that showed defiance were forced to drink the mixture by either having it shoved in their mouths or they were injected with it.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
so, like, no one could leave.
Gotcha. And didn't some people you're probably gonna talk about this, I'm probably just messing it up
I don't
again,
know.
but didn't some people try and run off and they got shot?
I don't know. I do know that some people obviously escaped, because we did have that witness statement earlier.
Mhm.
But I think this one older lady, like, hid under her bed
Mm.
throughout the whole thing, since she survived too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's a couple because they talk in that documentary, I can't remember what it was called, but they talked to a few of the survivors.
Yeah. So some of them were
It's just
able.
like a handful.
Yeah, it wasn't many. Like, they managed to just
Yeah.
escape, which is awesome for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So basically nobody could leave at this point, and thankfully some people did leave. Jones, however, did not take the mixture himself.
Of course not.
He died by a gunshot to the head. And it's unknown whether he did it himself or if somebody else did it for him.
Mhm.
But, like, you can hear the recording and it just, like, cuts out. And then I think that's when, like, after that, then he shoots himself. But, like, it's just crazy.
Do you think he shoots himself or do you think someone else did?
I think he was too much of a coward to do it himself.
That's 100% what I think.
Yeah, I think he was too much of a coward to do it himself. So I think somebody else would have done it for him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he didn't want to go the painful route. He wanted the boom, one shot to the head.
Yep.
Kill me now.
Yep.
When Jonestown was happened upon days later, it was observed that Jones was on his back. Most of the others were face down, their heads pointing towards Jones. It wasn't their final statement, it was Jones. So, in this observation, we clearly see the distorted perception that Jones had of himself in relation to the people. But in the end, death favors no one, and it was a grim death for everyone that called Jonestown home. And
ooh, that's a good line. Death favors no one.
Thank you.
I like that line.
Due to his fear of the outside world, Jones developed a drug addiction, which then increased his paranoia of those who thought differently than him.
Right.
He required control over everything, and that control ultimately determined their demise.
Right.
So it's just so sad. Like,
so sad.
If you look up the pictures, it's just horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, it's obviously nothing gory. It just looks like everybody's sleeping on their face.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's
Because
just
it wasn't a gory.
no, but it was just like piles upon piles of bodies. Like,
yeah,
it's so sad.
Yeah. Especially because of what it started out as, you know.
Yeah. So I have a header called Final Thoughts, which essentially talks about why I chose this topic. So the final header is Final Thoughts. So When initially choosing the topic of my research paper, which is what this is,
Mhm. Yeah.
I wanted to be able to focus on a cult or terrorist group that I was unaware of.
Mhm.
I wanted to be able to write with a fresh perspective, one that hadn't been skewed by an outside opinion of the topic. And at the time, I had never heard of this.
Okay.
One of my coworkers actually suggested I do it. So I'm like, okay. A topic of this proportion, however, was something that greatly interested me,
Mhm.
as morbid as that sounds.
Mhm.
I
Well, we have a morbid podcast, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I've always been interested in the mind of a criminal and why people do certain things and how
Right.
others can so blindly follow them.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
in researching this paper, it was very easy to recognize how everyone in Jonestown was drawn in and why everything ended the way it did.
Yeah.
Researching for this was far different than what I could have imagined. I simply figured I would find news articles and opinion pieces on the topic, on Jones himself, like,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I honestly found so much more. I was able to locate multiple documentaries on the subject where past members of the People's Temple were able to recount their experiences regarding living life with the People's Temple. Receiving
Mhm.
firsthand information was incredibly fascinating and very useful, as it allowed an honest opinion and perspective into why people were drawn into this rather
Well,
than,
yeah, and not all of them moved
yeah,
to, Guyana,
mhm,
so there was people that were there in the beginning.
yeah. And then they just decided, no, this isn't for me, and pieced out.
Mhm.
So, thankfully.
Yes.
um, I initially listened to that audio file, like I had mentioned, that was recorded on the last night. It was super bone chilling. Uh, I do suggest looking it up and listening to it though. Like, it's very cool. Um, it just gives like a
Mhm.
very interesting perspective on everything that happened that night, and it gives you a little bit more insight into it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, um, so the audio file basically started on the last white night. It was just after Congressman Leo Ryan and others had been murdered at the airstrip. So he called for the final white night, and he spoke to his sons and daughters one last time in the pavilion. Um, the recording shows just how delusional and paranoid he was.
Mhm.
Um, you could hear the children crying as they were being injected, and the parents that were crying as their children died in their arms.
Mhm.
Um, it's from listening to it, it's easy to understand why people were drawn to him. He was very charismatic and he knew exactly what to say to make others believe in him and to fear what was going
Yeah.
on.
Mhm. And
Um,
to just, like, completely depend on him.
yeah. So he knew how to speak to a crowd and he knew exactly what they needed to hear. The file then ends with him walking away from the microphone and eerie music playing in the background.
Mhm.
And then that was it. Like, it was just so creepy.
Yeah, it's super creepy audio.
Yeah. Another aspect that I found very interesting was how Jones seemed to lose personal control as he gained more and more power and more followers.
Mhm.
He lacked the ability to regulate his behavior. He hid behind a speaker as opposed to being front and center with the members. It was fascinating to watch him evolve from being a sharing and outgoing person with a strong charismatic presence, trying to spread the word of the People's Temple, to the very
Mhm.
uncharismatic Jones that would do anything possible to protect the followers from any outside influence or information.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, the only news going in and out was from his mouth only.
Right.
He preyed on the people that were lost, looking for an answer or purpose in life, and in the end, he would not even allow his people to freely find themselves. Instead, he exhausted and starved them and never granted them the ability to think for themselves.
Mhm.
He promoted the idea of enrichment in the world and by acceptance and tolerance, that the people would find fulfillment by following him and listening to his words to make the world a better place. And when he lost his way, he lost sight of this end goal and impoverished himself. He let a drug addiction take over from the pressures of leadership, causing a very paranoid delusion, which ultimately ended all that he had created.
Yeah.
And I thought I had of like I would have mentioned it in this paper, but I guess I didn't. But his one of his sons survived
Yeah.
because he was away at a soccer tournament,
Mhm.
and so he survived. And then there was this, they had like a little headquarters, I think, in Georgetown. And there was this mother and daughter there, and then so there's a mother, her older daughter, and then her 2 young children as well were in this house.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the call from Jones or one of his like secondhand people that were in his like little inner circle, basically saying it's time. And I can't, I don't know. I can't remember if the mother shot the 2 young children in the head or if she would have fed them a concoction, but I'm pretty sure that she shot them both in the head.
Ugh.
And then, like it was either a gun or a knife. I don't remember. But then afterwards, her and her daughter did it to each other. So then her and
Wow.
her older daughter killed each other so that they would be with them.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
yeah, it's crazy that like blind devotion, right?
Yeah.
But that is my Jonestown story.
It was really awful, but like good. You know what I mean?
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Jonestown is very fascinating. I definitely recommend watching any documentary that you can find on it. Like I said, it's like the cultiest of the cults.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good cautionary tale too of, not letting yourself get carried away into somebody else.
Precisely.
Yeah. So. Well, on that beautifully happy note, thanks for joining us again. If you want more of us lovely ladies before then, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Histories and Mysteries, or you can shoot us a email at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com.
Yay. We hope you guys enjoyed that.
We look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.